The views and opinions expressed in these radio programs are those of the individual hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of Universal Broadcasting Network.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here of Dr. Judy WTF and the Psychological Healing Center. And tonight I have a wonderful guest. She is one of our team members at the center, Dr. Tracee Williams. Gaining popularity already. And Dr. Williams, Dr. Tracee, I'll call you Dr. Tracee if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay, so you do a lot of the mind map therapy, and tonight I thought we'd bring on a little bit more juice, a little more controversy, just cause it's the end of the year, we might as well stir things up a little bit. And tonight our topic is family dysfunction, African American style. And so being that my big passion way before the mind map was called the Be the Cause mind map for healing human disconnect, I was very interested in healing global disconnect. And global disconnect obviously is a global problem. It is very much going to be explained through the mind map system, because basically what's happening is we've turned into a bunch of, I call them a bunch of isms. So we've got black, white, Chinese, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, Christian. I mean, it's just a bunch of isms, which is fine to be an ism. It's just that when we start judging, blaming, shaming, projecting on each other, and destroying each other, it becomes a big problem for the human race. And ultimately, we do share this planet, and if we don't know how to do panel 7, which I'll get into more, which is about synergy and interconnection, we're not going to make it as a human race. So just a little bit about my perspective from a global perspective, because my commitment to you is to go deeper, cross-cultural and global. And thank you for all the wonderful mind map students we have all around the world. We have people literally across America, anywhere from Mississippi, Florida, New York,
Virginia,
yeah, okay,
Michigan,
yeah, right,
Texas.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Skype, and thank you, teletherapy. We do mind map coaching literally all over the United States. So we also spread globally to countries like Oman and countries like Iceland. And we have quite a few people in Iceland who are partaking now of the mind map therapy. So obviously we need to solve the problem of global disconnect. And I do have another website for those of you who are interested. I'm going to be focusing on that next year. It's called healingglobalDisconnect.com. And the mission statement is that although we have come together in many areas of human endeavor and we've excelled, we have failed in one area, which is to really create a united humanity. So hopefully tonight's discussion will shed some light on family dysfunction, African American style, what racism does to crack our lens of perception, how unhealthy projecting on other people of different color, different religion, different cultures is to the human race, and how, as I like to say, Dr. Tracee, just because something is culturally correct, it doesn't mean it's mentally healthy. And as mental health professionals, we have to help people to look from the point of view of what's best for them, what's best for the human race. So with that said, I'm going to break down the mind map from a global perspective. And thank you. I think it's up there now. And originally the mind map was called join the human race. And it started with panel 1, that we all were one people. Panel 2, we splintered off into a bunch of, we started the isming and breaking apart from each other, and then we became steeped in our own squat and stubborn, and we DNA'd into what we thought was our self-righteousness, our way or the highway. And then as a result of that, we didn't do well, and then wars broke out and people clashed with each other and created a lot of chaos. We're on panel 4 now. And then we decided that that wasn't going to work, so we're going to get more stubborn in our isms, and we fractioned off even more and became these defense mechanisms, but this time from a global point of view. The isms that I spoke of that create racism. And then finally, we're at the breaking point. So if we don't do something on a critical mass level to shift this and shift out of this cracked lens of perception and this kind of stubborn positioning that we're taking as a human race, then we can expect to see a big clash of the isms, which is already happening. So if you look at panel number 789, this is our opportunity as individuals and as a human race to come together in a united humanity sense and to understand that we must preserve our dignity, we must preserve boundaries and respect, and ultimately ethics, which I think is a really big key to mental health, and then go into a healing process, global healing process, and then learn how to relate to the planet, relate to our fellow human brothers and sisters, and share this planet in a much more peaceful, respectable way. So with that said, let's talk about the Black American family. And I know that this is a really big generalization because it's just, one discussion here. So bear with me, bear with Dr. Tracee, because I recognize there are a lot of different family types and a lot of different people who come from various socioeconomic backgrounds and so on. And so just a little bit of introduction to, as a psychologist, psychological assistant, soon to be psychologist, what do you find to be some of the issues when treating Black families?
Sure. Well, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Judy, for just putting and creating the mind map together, because it really speaks volumes to African Americans when they go through the process. Okay. African American clients have flourished so much through your mind map system, and considering that they make up a wonderfully flawed culture. Okay, it's damage resilience.
Damage resilience. I like that.
It's easy.
Elaborate.
Yes, it's easy for other cultures to stereotype us, which penetrates ongoing cycles such as psychoviruses that have basically manipulated into multi-generational families. And this keeps an individual from seeing the truth. And in the mind map system, you speak about the truth and what was the lie and what was the truth. And it just locked into the dysfunctional system that we are accustomed to. And therefore, in session, we look at individuals for who they are because, like I said, the African American, there's many different cultures that pretty much stem from slavery.
Yes.
And different African Americans take certain things from slavery. Might not be good. It might be bad, certain things. But it's basically emotional. And that's where the mind map system speaks volume because it's also emotional. Treatment or healing.
So we talk a lot about the multi-generational transmission process and the layers of, I call it those shadows that really shadow our light. And what our light is from a mind map perspective is our true, soulful, authentic self. stripped of color, stripped of culture. We are human beings at the core of who we are. And so what happens to that core of who we are is it gets shadowed over by history, events, and so on. And so we can't ignore the topic of slavery when we talk about mental injury, can we? Because I talk a lot about, especially in the book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which some of you are familiar with. And if you're not, you can purchase it through my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com, or shortcut drjudywtf.com, or amazon.com. We have a caller. Beautiful. Hi, you're on the couch with two doctors here. What's your name, please?
Wendy.
Hi, Wendy. Where are you calling from?
From Miami. I didn't think I would going to get anybody so quickly like that.
We're here. We're on it. So you're on the couch. Very nice of you to call. So have you heard the shows before, or are you a first-time listener?
No, actually, I've been listening to you since May, and this is when I found out my mother was a narcissist. Well, the effects that my mother was a narcissist. She is.
Big topic. That's been a big topic. Yeah, a very injurious experience. And I just want to clarify, because what the mind map means by narcissism specifically is a system gone wrong. And it happens to be that the reverse happens, that instead of the baby being nourished by the mother, it's opposite. It's the baby and the child taking care of the mother's needs, and so on. So it's a very broad subject. But tell me a little bit about what inspired you to pick up the phone on this conversation.
Well, I am African American, and I don't know if you remember our call before, but I called you in reference just to, I like your system, how it's going to be really quick, and I'm not going to therapy so many times, but
right.
I know that with African Americans we don't do therapy.
Yep.
And it's very difficult to even try to explain to my family, because it's really not registering. I mean, just last week, or about a week or so, I spoke with my brother, he's the golden child.
Yes.
And it was like we're going round and round in circles and trying to explain to him what's going on, and that mom really has a serious problem. Mm-hmm. He kind of knows about it, but he denies it. And he said, my mom's a Southern Baptist woman. Well, not Baptist, but she's Southern.
Okay.
And my my brother's from the South. Mm-hmm. And my father's passed away, and he was an alcoholic. Okay. But anyway,
these are some of your
I led me to you. You know.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I meant to say that these are some of your panel 1 wounds. Okay, so that your father was an alcoholic, your mother tends toward the narcissistic behaviors, and then on top of it, there are cultural wounds, and we cannot, as mental health professionals, overlook cultural wounds, because along with these panel 1, 5 injuries of childhood, which are physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, smothering, and neglect. There's also that layer, which tonight we're bringing right up to the surface, the layer of racism and the cracked lens of perception of how we see each other. And, Dr. Tracee and I were just talking about how African American people don't like therapy. Mm-hmm. They're resistant. Mm-hmm. But I do think that we can reframe therapy as psychoeducation. So let me ask you this, Wendy, and also Dr. Tracee. Do you think that if people were looking at therapy more, instead of talk, and process their feelings and years of endless, I don't know what, I'm not a fan, what if it was a deep educational process of really revealing the truth about our childhood wounds, how they embed and encode in us, and how to deconstruct all of it and then morph out? Do you think that framing it that way and creating that system would make it more palatable, amenable, maybe less threatening to the African American culture in general?
Well, it's depending on the situation. It's depending on the person, you know.
Okay.
I think my brother, the golden child, understands a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I try to explain to him about different situations, maybe dealing with himself, trying to, I don't know, just trying to explain to it in layman's terms.
Okay.
Instead of psychological terms or whatever. But it's depending on the situation. Now, with my mother, she's old school. She wouldn't understand. I did try to, put it in biblical terms because she goes to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
How you have to build a foundation, and the foundation had to be built it from the root up for it to be a solid foundation. And she didn't understand. I'm like, I don't know what to say.
And
yeah,
that's
I mean,
part
it's very
of the
difficult.
That's part of the wall of narcissism. It's a defense mechanism. Okay, so talk a little bit, and maybe you'd like to ask Dr. Tracee a question or two about how the impact of being the just being black, how that impacts a human being's life in terms of the way other cultures view you, in terms of how you issues like self-esteem, issues like self-image, and so on. So let's get a little bit into that, because that was one of the things we wanted to shine the truth light on. So what's been your experience of that?
Well, it's really rough. It's a lonely, lonely road. Let me tell you.
Okay.
It's really lonely. I mean, like for instance, right now, my mother, I live with my mother, and my mother's gone to Mississippi, that's where she's from, to a funeral. Mm-hmm. And basically, I decided not to go, not only because, I don't have the funds to do it, but I just don't feel comfortable around the atmosphere where my mother is, because my mother spreads rumors, it's untruth. And whenever I go there, I get frozen. Because, I'm just emotionally frozen. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to react. If I do express some kind of emotion, I'm going crazy or I'm faking.
Okay.
So, it's very difficult. So they wouldn't understand that it's social anxiety. If I say it's social anxiety, they might say, oh, she's just a baby or she's a child. That's the bottom line with everything, mostly when you have these issues. So I discovered that I have anxiety attacks, agoraphobia. I got, a whole slew of things, and I couldn't even explain to anybody about it because they wouldn't understand.
So let me ask you this. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is pretty typical of narcissistically injured children, wouldn't you say, Dr. Tracee? That the shell is really, really strong. Mm-hmm. So now let's add a layer of the multicultural wounds onto that. So what do you have to say about that, Tracee? Add that other layer onto what Wendy's saying.
Yes, Wendy, hi. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Tracee. Thank you.
So within the African American culture, we have the topic of communication. A lot of things are swept under the rug, and therefore, as a child, we're not able to express correctly. We're not able to communicate with each other correctly. And therefore, that leads to when you become an adult and you're thinking strong of what you become, right? You're not able to express with your mother how you feel. There's a lot of guilt, maybe, perhaps, that you're not having the boundaries to say, okay, this is how I feel, and how to actually express that, how to relay it properly, because she is, older, so from another generation where things are just done differently. So in the mind map system, what we do is we look at the wounds deeper, and we figure out how did we miss that communication, you see. coming from individually, so that you are able to, within, and you can speak more about it, the truth dialogue, you are able to speak to your mother in a way that's not hurtful, it's respectful.
And we'll put you in panel number 5, which is the defense mechanisms, which is very hard to avoid putting people who are narcissistically injured. It's hard to avoid putting them into panel 5 because by virtue of the injury, there's a real strong defensive shell. Also, Wendy, please contact us because, first of all, the Peaceful Healing Dialogue, which is a great way to get that communication bridged, is up on the website. So if you go to drjudywtf.com, you can pull it right off there under forums. So please be in touch with us. And so I really appreciate you calling in. And of course, you know that we have amazing team members. And sometimes I think it's really important for people to know that there are people who, therapeutic modalities that offer a team that are more culturally matched. And sometimes it is important to know that your therapist can relate to you because they know the culture better. So that's why we're really passionate about cross-cultural and matching people properly and having a system that's fluid to get you from through to, and consider these multi-generational and multiracial layers that slip in there no matter what. They just slip right in there. So please be in touch,
yes,
okay?
Definitely. Yes, I will.
And
I want to
you.
thank you so much
Wendy,
for having the show, Dr. Judy. Thank
My
you, Dr.
honor.
Tracee.
thank you.
I mean, you really brought a light to my eyes, and I really appreciate it. I got a little bit more confidence now, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, it's just really an honor to do this, and I wish you a very happy new year. And we'll keep shedding the truth light on these subjects. So thank you, Wendy, for calling in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Judy, I did want to talk about what you just said with African Americans not really going to therapy. The system is very much systemized where there is a beginning and an ending.
Yes.
So it's also teaching us about ourselves. So it's not like you're telling your sister or your brother or your husband, I'm going to therapy, for art, because that's a lot of the stigmatism that's going on. You're talking about our things that are going on in the household. You're letting people know what's going on.
And by the way, speaking of racial injuries, right, multi-generational, guess what I'm thinking here is what a person who has a multi-generational history of slavery and so on, and reactivity and tension and racial tension, some people in the black culture may not trust a white therapist. Isn't that fair to say?
Yeah, sometimes, honestly, they don't trust African American therapists.
Oh, really? So tell me more about
depending
that.
on where they are coming from, where their background. Remember what I said in the beginning, our culture is wonderfully flawed, okay? So therefore, there's a lot of damage that's within it. Sometimes, and this comes from slavery, a lot of topics that we were going to talk about, it could be things that represent their mother. I might look like their mother. You see, I might talk like their mother. I might, do things in a certain way like their mother. So if their mother's narcissist, then they don't know how to come across and be able to be non-judgmental.
So this is the projection process. So part of therapy involves a kind of a level of transference where you transfer your own feelings onto the therapist. So when we do this globally and we're transferring our own fears onto other individuals, you can see how that could create racism, correct? And this all has to do with fear-based and the amygdala, which is our primitive brain, which is a reactionary brain. And going back to B.F. Skinner, the psychologist who did a lot of studies on reinforcement and aversion training and pairing stimuli. And so imagine what happens, and we don't have to go too far here. We just turn on the news, right? And we could see how if a black man is driving a car and a white police officer pulls that person over, there's going to be major flooding of the amygdala, because we've seen too many tapes already of people being beaten and people assuming things about each other. So perhaps the black individual might assume that the white officer is going to be hassling that person, and maybe part of it is true. So there's a truth factor in some cases, and maybe that white officer might assume that that black person might be violent. Okay, so these are the projections. So how do we get away from this, from your perspective?
Healing one person at a time.
That's a good answer.
That's like the best
nice answer. Okay.
That's the best answer. But yes, there's been a lot of talks between us and the other team members of how we can move past, everything, the stereotypes with African men, just looking as far as black skin is wrong, light skin is better, things of that nature, the way that we dress, the styles, our hair, things like that is, maybe scary to some, because they don't understand us. That's a big thing that is going on socially, is understanding the African American culture.
So in terms of families, what are some of the rules and roles within the family? Because we spoke about Armenian dysfunctional families with Dr. Irene Yaimadian a few weeks ago. And so I guess we're just going to roll through family dysfunction, Armenian style, Black American style, and we're going to just keep rolling down this yellow brick road until we understand each other a little bit better. And we saw that in the Armenian culture, there was a lot of smothering going on. Okay, and the women were not as important as the men, and so on. And sometimes the men were the golden children, and the women were just kind of secondary, and so on. So what's in general? I know we're kind of doing a big blanket statement here, or generalization, but what's going on? Rules, roles, fathers' roles, mothers' roles, so on.
Yeah. So in the African American culture, there are a lot of women or children that basically, in my sense, have to grow up faster. We have to,
and why?
We have to do better because of the counterparts, the Caucasian counterparts.
Okay.
We feel that we have to do 3 times as much work to be noticed. The biggest negative core belief of the African American culture is powerless, one below.
Beautiful insight on that, really, because let's go back to the slavery, okay? So I talk about childhood as a hostage situation. Well, isn't slavery a major hostage situation?
Yeah, it's an emotional era.
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of disempowerment there. So I can see how the negative core belief, cultural core belief, is powerlessness. So then what happens out of that? Out of that core belief, what then emanates chaos-wise?
The mind map gives reason to the lies. As you spoke earlier in panel 3, there's a lot of encoding that is put onto a child from multi-generational families, which then spirals out into the chaos, panel 4. With that, we start understanding what is really truth. What is stereotype? For example, fathers not being in the household. They're saying that that's a big percentage. However, there's a big percentage, or a study from the Department of Health and Human Services, that about 70% of African American fathers are in the household and are active. And they're active.
So where did this get skewed?
So that's the thing with research. You and me understand research. You can look at a rural town and, receive your information. So you really have to understand, where is the information coming from? Because that is what's being passed down to us as lies. And so that's what's later on telling the family, it's easy, let's just divorce, because fathers aren't around anyway. And that's not true. There's a lot of fathers out there, thank you fathers, that are stepping up and being active for their children, because that's very important in the mind map. And it's very important for, young young children, especially males, to see that role model being present.
Our children need pillars. And so mother and father, if you look at panel number 3 for a moment, you can see the DNA strand. I use it very metaphorically. We use it very metaphorically at the Psychological Healing Center. So the pink strand, let's say, stands for the mother, and the blue one, let's say, stands for the father, secondary caregiver. First of all, the father needs to nurture the mother in order for the mother to be the nurturer of her babies. The two have to be in union, on the same page with parents, parental rules and roles, so that the children feel safe and can climb that ladder of self-actualization.
And that's where the system has gone wrong right there, where you said the mother, the father is supposed to make sure that basically the mother is emotionally stable at that point.
Yes.
And that's where there's communication lacked. So when African male and African woman, when they come together, since there's so many different cultures, so many different roles within the culture, backgrounds from what they chose to, like I said, keep or not keep from slavery, and then meshing it together. It's like adding more rocks, and not in the women or the male not knowing whose rocks are whose. You see what I'm saying?
Interesting.
Or whose negative core beliefs are whose.
So are you saying that there's a glitch between the woman and the man, a communication glitch, and so that they never really actually land on that same page and discuss things and create the rules and the roles of the family?
It's a struggle. It's a
struggle.
struggle. And a lot of, like I said, the families work hard and they don't seek help, like therapy. And that's why I was going back to the mind map system. It gives you a direction. It tells you, just like you said, from what has happened and why did it happen, the truth from the lies, what propaganda has said for the black man and keeping them down, or for the strong woman in the family. It tells us where did things go wrong so that we can reboot that system and do better and have better lives and actually stop the cycle. When we look at it from a different perspective, then we realize, oh, my children don't have to live this way. You see what I'm saying? Even though it might be out here, my children can know the truth of how a family should be, the truth of how we should be, and just push through that at home and then broaden it out, into the world, just like what you're doing now on the air and expressing that some of these statistics are wrong. Some of the propaganda, let me just give you another example.
Please do.
With Dove. I don't know if you heard about Dove, but they're all about beauty.
Okay.
Right? What does beautiful look like?
The
bar.
So
yeah, and they retracted that real quick. But that showed that if you're going to be clean, have this nice lotion, you're going to be lighter. That's better.
Lighter.
So these children are looking at that.
Sure.
Right? And these children are very young. They just let things come in, as you were saying, and psychoviruses. And
so let me just elaborate, because some people don't know what a psychovirus is. It's a term I coined, and what I mean by a psychovirus. Do you have a call-in? Okay, I'll just finish the point. Psychovirus is a false message, a diseased message that we get into our brain, and then we reverberate our parental messages, and they mess up our thinking. Oh, hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Tracee and myself. What's your name, please?
Ryan.
Hi, Ryan. Nice to hear from you.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Michigan.
Wonderful. Okay, so please go ahead, pick our brains, ask questions. Go for it.
Well, I just wanted to add something to the show, and I really appreciate the work that you do, and Dr. Tracee. It's really nice to see you on the show. I am not African American. I'm actually Native American, and would love to see a show because there are so many similarities when it comes from the Native American background and the African American background, because of basically what I see is oppression, intergenerational trauma, internalized oppression, lateral oppression, and so we become each other's worst enemy.
Meaning that the people within the tribe, within the culture, become each other's projection people,
Yes.
like that? Okay. And that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. And by the way, your wish is my command, because I will do a show on Native America. And by the way, I was just up in Alaska, and I learned a little bit more about please help me out here, the Tling people. Does that sound familiar? Okay. But
Yeah.
it's a Native American tribe up in the Alaskan area, and so
Yeah.
there's just a lot to talk about when it comes to our isms, right? We have so many isms, but
Oh, for sure.
but it does.
And one of the ways that we've dealt with it is through alcohol. And
Yes, I know that.
going back through history, when we were signing treaties, with I guess the European forefathers,
Yes.
they were actually bringing barrels of whiskey to the treaty signings.
Wow. It reminds me of a terrible story. I'll say it really quickly. Okay, so my parents were Holocaust survivors, and we finally left Hungary in 1956, which tells you a little bit about my age. And so anyway, what my father did was, in order to get across the border, because they were going to take us all to jail, we were going from Budapest over to Austria, they got everybody drunk so that they could get them to sleep and we can save our lives, basically. Yeah. Isn't it disgusting how we function as a human race? The betrayal, the level of tricks we play upon each other in order to meet our agenda, and I'm so glad we're talking about it. I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time, so I'm feeling really happy about being freed up to talk about Join the Human Race, Healing Global Disconnect, the issues of the cracked lens of perception through the isms and racism. So please go ahead. I just needed to say that.
Well, it's just I'm just adding to the show, and where I grew up and how I grew up. My mother always taught us treat everybody the way you want to be treated.
Sure.
And so that's what I tried to do.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it didn't really work coming back the other way. And like I said, I have many African American friends, some of my best friends here in Michigan, and we actually, we talk about these things. We talk, like we call it the sick forest, and it's kind of like the sick forest. It's kind of like if somebody's having a really some large issues and personal issues, and they want to get treatment or go to therapy. Well, you take that individual, and then they're getting help, and they go into treatment, and they're getting professional help, and they're getting told the truth, and they're they're getting themselves clean.
Yeah.
And so say after a month or 3 months or whatever, they come out of treatment, and they're feeling good about themselves. They learn some new things, but they go right back into the same environment.
Great example.
They go back into a very dysfunctional family, dysfunctional community. Yeah. And then in just a matter of time, the community or the family, the dysfunctional family or community, are looking at the person that, just got out of the treatment and is doing good. Well, they're making it seem like they're the problem.
Such a great point. It's like it's sort of like there's a group force, right? They don't want the person to get healthy because, in essence, right, Dr. Tracee, if one family member gets healthy, then it sort of forces the other family members to look in the truth mirror and face their own demons, and they don't want to do that, so they're going to sabotage that person and project onto them. This is a very big challenge in mind map therapy working with children, because a lot of times, I was just talking to one of the interns on the staff, I feel like sometimes we clean up the kids and then they go back into the family, and just like what you're saying, Ryan, just because their kids are getting better, the family system is limiting their ability to grow, and they kind of like drag them back down into the dysfunctional system. It's really, really sad. So what we need, and I'm calling on everybody here, because obviously I can't do this alone. The team can't do this alone. We need a sense of critical mass where everyone starts speaking up and telling the truth and having much more truth conversations and building a web of support for the truth, for healing, so that we can create, once we're healed, that we could really have a safe community to really manifest ourselves into. Because if everybody's just going to drag us back down and
sit back and watch,
right, then we're just going to be polluted again. Yes. Same old, the WTF.
Well, the major hit to Native Americans was the actual, it was called the boarding school system, the Indian boarding school system. And that basically stripped Native Americans of their culture, language, you name it, it's gone. And basically the motto was, kill the Indian, save the man. And that's what we have to grow up with.
Wow.
So imagine, what is a man without dignity?
And that's also in the African American kill.
Say that again?
That's also within the African American culture, as he was saying when he first came on, that there's a lot that are in common with the with the man. And
I think of this word, I don't know why it's popping into my head, like de-hulking somebody. I don't even know if it's a word, but I'm thinking about what you just said. You're stripping everything about that person away, and you're just throwing all that in the garbage, and then you've got this man, this puppet that you can now infiltrate and get them to do whatever you want to do, the proverbial you want to do to meet the agenda.
And then so how can they teach their children if they've been ripped apart?
Exactly.
Okay, no integrity
and you're
left.
Basically saying, we're going to take all this away, and the what we believe as Europeans or descendants of Europeans is we're going to teach you a new way, which really isn't our way.
It's not authentic. It's not authentic. Okay.
It's farthest from authentic.
Exactly.
I certainly appreciate the work that you're doing, Dr. Judy and Dr. Tracee, and just awesome. My main goal is to, and I talked with both my kids. I have a daughter who's 19. My son's going to be 18 next summer. So we're actually going to take a family trip, and we're going to meet up with you, Dr. Judy.
Are you serious?
And we are going to go through the system with you. And I've talked to them about it, and they are on board. I have custody of my son, custody of my children, and they both said that they would be up for that. So, but one last thing I want to say, and I teach Native American language and culture coming from the Michigan area, because there's like 500 different tribes throughout North America. And a lot of different languages and cultures. It's not all the same. It's not one language.
Before?
But
have we spoken? Have we spoken in the past?
Yes, we have.
Okay, now I remember who you are. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
But I was going through, I was given a talk. I used to work at a tribe here in Michigan, and I was giving a talk that's called Understanding Native American Culture. But we actually had a woman that was working for the tribe who was from Africa. She was African American. And so I was going through a lot of our traditional teachings and the medicine wheel. And after the teaching of the talk, she actually came up to me afterwards and said that a lot of her original teachings were very similar to ours.
Wow.
So I thought it was very, very awesome.
Well, we're interconnected, and when I say join the human race, I don't mean let's all be like each other. That's ridiculous. Right. We need to keep the flavor of who we are. That's what makes us interesting. So if we can create a united humanity where we bring the best of our culture, our music, our food, our humor, our medicine, right?
The truth of it.
For sure.
Wouldn't that be cool if everybody were to share in this and benefit from this? And
that's what we're supposed to be doing.
That's what we're supposed to be doing.
We're supposed to be sharing. And you talk a lot about it, and and respecting one another and sharing and how awesome would that be? But I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. I know you probably have other callers.
I'm so honored.
One of
my you just got a fantasy going in my mind of having this huge table, that extends for like a mile, and having everybody bring their fruit or food to this table and share in the goodies. And I mean it in a metaphorical way, and maybe food would be one, but just to be able to bring from the richness of each culture and the wisdom from each culture and bring it to the table of the human race. So I just want to say I'm super excited about meeting you in person and your family. I'm very honored, and bring them all, okay? We'll do mind map therapy. And also, you're going to let me know what I can do to help Native American people to regain their culture and to regain their dignity. Okay, so thank you.
Yes, for sure.
Very much.
Thank you, Dr. Judy, and thank you, Dr.
Pleasure.
Tracee. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
I have to go shovel some snow now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Stay warm.
Okay.
And,
good night.
Good night. Bye. I know we have another caller. Oh, we have 5 more minutes. Okay, so we're going to attempt to shrink a tune, very controversial tune. Let's just up the ante here and show the nastiness of the wounds of racism. So, Dr. Tracee, you picked this song. I think it's very appropriate, and we're doing this song so that you can understand the schisms and the isms and the disconnects, and this is what disconnect sounds like. So I'll preface it with that. It's a song by Joyner Lucas. Is that how you pronounce it? And the song is called I'm Not Racist, and we'll just throw a few lyrics in it. I know we only have like 5 minutes to do it, but we'll do it. Okay. With all due respect, I don't have pity for you black. Oh, I'm substituting out the N word. I'll just say N. I don't have pity for you black N's. That's the way I feel. So this is the white person talking, okay? Screaming, Black Lives Matter. All the black guys rather be deadbeats than pay your bills. Your ends this and ends that. Call everybody N and get a N mad. As soon as I say the N-word, then everyone reacts and want to swing at me and call me racist because I ain't black. Well, pound that then, talking about slavery like you was around back then, like you was picking cotton off of the effing ground back then, like you was on the plantation getting down back then. So can you hear a little bit of the anger and the hurt? I see a black man aiming his gun, but I'd rather see a black man claiming his son. And I don't mean just for one day and you done. I'm going to have to hear this song. Okay, go ahead. Dr. Tracee.
Okay, so to that, I don't really like you. That's where I'm at. Screaming all lives matter is a protest to my protest. What kind of stuff is that? And that's one war you'll never win. The power in the N word is a different sin. We shouldn't say it, but we do. And that's just what it is. But that doesn't mean that you can say it just because you have black friends. The N word, that word was originated for you to keep us under. And when we use it, we know that just to greet one another. And when you use it, we know that there's a double meaning under. And even if I wasn't picking cotton physically, that doesn't mean I'm not affected by the history. My grandmama was a slave. That gets to me. And you ain't got no sympathy, you weak man. I'm sorry you can never feel my life, trying to have faith, but I never feel all right. It's hard to elevate when this country is ran by whites. You think you know everything, but you don't. You want to copy our slang, everything that we know, trying to steal black culture and then make it your own. Whoa. I'm exhausted. I can't even drive without cops trying to start things. I'm tired of the systematic racism. And even though Barack was half black, you hated President Obama. I know that's a fact. You couldn't wait to get him out and your culture back. But I know there's a disconnect between your culture and mine. I praise Tupac. He was fighting for his life way before he died. N-word. And all you care about is money and power. Hatred all in your brain, it slowly starts to convince you, and then you teach it to your children until the cycle continues. I'm not a racist, but I cry a lot. You don't know what it's like to be in a frying pot. You don't know what it's like to mind your own business and get stopped by the cops and not know if you're about to die or not. You worry about your life, so you take mine. I wish we could trade shoes or we could change lives so we could understand each other more, but that'd take time. I'm not a racist.
You know, that's just such a powerful statement, that the wish that we could understand each other. And so what is Healing Human Disconnect about is really understanding each other and putting ourselves in each other's footsteps, really, in each other's, what do you say, shoes, not footsteps, shoes, you know what I mean. So this is a truth dialogue kind of a song, isn't it?
Yes.
And now that I know that we can't play it out on YouTube because then they'll scrap it, I think I'm going to listen to it, and I think it's powerful, a lot of pain there and a lot of vulnerability of, I wish, don't we all wish, that we could join the human race and understand each other and find a better way. And so we're trying to find a better way, and I think one of the reasons that I didn't go with the macro project of Join the Human Race, which I will be going back to, called Healing Global Disconnect, is because I think you're right, Dr. Tracee. I think we've got to do it one individual at a time. And so that when we heal individually, not only do we have a better opportunity to heal global disconnect, we also have the opportunity to not spread that psychovirus to the next generation. So we get to heal backward, all the wounds of the past. We get to heal in the here and now, and we get to heal the future generation and be healing to the future generation. And then the big picture is the global. So any other comments, Dr. Tracee?
Well, basically, in every culture, there are cultural injuries stemming from the multi-generational families. But you are not defined by those wrong or false memories. A rough past can always turn into a working system for you that develops a new perspective into basically healthier living. And it all starts with you.
And that's why you're on the Psychological Healing Center staff, because of your wisdom and your kindness and your ability to think systemically and look at the entire system's gone wrong, which is what we do. And I'm very grateful that you're on the team.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And so for those of you, I just want to give you a heads up, my videotape on the 9-panel Mind Map Journey to Healing is almost edited, and it'll be available next year. We're not going to have any more shows this year because we're taking a little break, and we're going to be back next year, January. Happy New Year to everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and any other holidays you celebrate. And happy Join the Human Race and Healing Global Disconnect. And we'll see you back here in January. And please do write and request our 15-minute free consultation, and know that we have a team of beautiful people who are busy doing mind map therapy and healing human disconnect. Thank you for tuning in and listening.
Thank you.